Hi everybody, thanks for taking time to attend the DuxSoup webinar today. My name is Patrick Collins and I'm Head of Customer Service at DuxSoup, and I'm also here with Ruta, who is Head of Customer Service for European time zones. So a lot of people that are part of the webinar today have probably spoken to Ruta and I via live chat or knowledge base, or possibly you've been part of the webinars in the past. So thanks for attending today. This is going to be an introduction to a lot of things about DuxSoup Safety, and I think LinkedIn safety in general is quite a hot topic at the moment. So we wanted to cover that and give some insights and answer some questions on that. For anybody that's new to DuxSoup or new to LinkedIn automation or anything like that, welcome, and hopefully we can help you today. For a really quick summary, DuxSoup is a LinkedIn lead generation tool. So by lead generation, we basically mean a tool that can turn a cold relationship into a warm relationship. Somebody that is going to go from a LinkedIn profile to somebody who wants to speak to you about your services. And DuxSoup can help you with connection messages, with in-mail, with first-degree messaging, with downloading data, a load of different functionality. And the goal of DuxSoup is to replace human behavior so that you can focus on other things at the same time. I'm not going to go into all the features of DuxSoup today because I want to focus this on safety, because without making sure your profile is safe and you have the right settings, you put your whole LinkedIn profile in jeopardy. And you want your LinkedIn profile to last for, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years. Even younger people on this call, they might have it for 50 years. So you have no idea what sort of jobs you're going to run, what sort of people you're going to hire, what ways you're going to use LinkedIn in the future. But I do know that personally, I think I've really pushed LinkedIn hard for maybe 4 or 5 years. I've got about 11,000 connections now. And if I had to start from zero again, it would be highly frustrating. Not the end of the world, but just frustrating. So I want to show you today how to use DuxSoup in the safest way and answer any questions about LinkedIn flags, LinkedIn automations, any questions about Lint Helper sometimes people ask about. So please ask away in the chat function. If you want to just say hello and say which country you're from, it's always interesting to see who's on the webinar. But more specifically, just ask us any questions about safety and we'll get started. I think if I can run through some of the questions now, that'll give me a bit of a tone for what I want to cover, and then we can dive into it. So, hello, Rita. Welcome. Can we run through some of the questions first?
Yeah, we have one question so far from Jim. He says that I sometimes get emails saying LinkedIn dislikes plugins, will deactivate accounts that use them. Is this true?
Yeah, so I think one thing is, if you think about LinkedIn terms and conditions, LinkedIn are motivated as a business to make money from the data they have, and they want to make money within the services they offer. So LinkedIn offer things like paid in-mails, they have a sales navigator account, a recruiter account, LinkedIn ads, all those sorts of things. What LinkedIn does not offer is a more automated way to connect with people. And I think connecting with people is the most powerful function of LinkedIn. So I find it quite crazy that they haven't invented that, but it also makes sense because if you can't automate and it takes a long time, you're more likely to pay for ads, and that's where they make the money. So any automation tools are slightly against what LinkedIn wants you to do, because by automating, you're saying you're using an external tool that LinkedIn doesn't really want you to do. So if it's DuxSoup or if it's any other competitors, it's all the same psychology. So I think when you read reports of things saying LinkedIn are trying to shut down all different types of software, I'm sure they are, because with DuxSoup and other companies with having so many customers, those customers, if they weren't using DuxSoup, might have to just resort to paying for in-mails. So obviously LinkedIn would want to shut down the softwares. In terms of your own personal account, you always have a series of flags. So if you ever get a flag to say LinkedIn has recognized you're using a third-party automation tool and this is a warning, it always is just a warning. You'll never get your account closed, but it's just a warning to say stop what you're doing. This has happened a lot, I think, for Lint Helper and maybe for Ask Leonard and a few other tools. We've never had this for DuxSoup customers, so I can't really comment on what to do because it's never happened. If I was a Lint Help customer and I got that email, I would instantly uninstall Lint Helper. But if you're a DuxSoup user, we've never had people receive that email. So in terms of automation tools, you have to be wary because this is a hack. This is a hacking tool. It's completely legal and public, but it's a tool to hack against a traditional system. And if you're trying to do things like that, you have to be wary of the consequences, which is LinkedIn are trying to stop these. I'm sure they won't, because that's the skill of any LinkedIn tool, to try and stay one step ahead of the curve. But you have to be careful with any of these tools to know what are the warning signs and how to be safe. But part of the call today, or the webinar today, sorry, is to show you how to keep your account safe so that you never get anything flagged. And one of the most simple things is just to make sure that your behavior looks like normal behavior. LinkedIn has so many sort of automations and triggers and algorithms to try and spot people who are using external tools. But one of them is don't connect with 1,000 people a day. 50 people a day is fine. And I'll show you some of these settings in a more detailed. So I think that should cover that so far. Any other quick questions, or we'll get into it?
Just one more.
Yeah.
How fast do you update your app when LinkedIn makes updates?
So the process is usually, obviously we don't get an email from LinkedIn saying we're just about to update our system, let us know. So this is why we sometimes get frustrated users, and I think it's trying to understand the cycle. So LinkedIn will randomly update the UI, the way the system works, without telling anybody. And then some DuxSoup users will find out that actually the system's not working in the right way. So they'll email us with a problem. We'll double check everything and realize we need to make a quick fix or a quick bug replacement, that sort of thing. So the time scale from LinkedIn changing to us having a fix is usually about 2 days. So sometimes as a DuxSoup user, if there is a bug, you need to just email us and say what's going on here, and we'll let you know. I think from a psychology point of view, you need to understand a few things as well. So we recently had a user on a Facebook group, DuxSoup, that was going absolutely crazy, demanding. We have a call with them straight away, loads and loads of messages. And quite honestly, it was quite embarrassing for that person. For us as customer service, we're trying to help everybody as best as we can, as specific as we can, but we're real people on the other side of this email. So if somebody's horrible to us, we're not highly motivated to help you. If somebody's really polite and say, can you help us and can you work hard, we will literally do anything we can to diagnose the problem and help you. So I think one sort of guide is, if you do have a problem, just be nice, make it easy for us to try and see the problem. Record your screen, send us a message, whatever it may be. But if you're horrible, why would we help you? So I think that's one quick thing to be aware of. Okay, I think there's a few things. Ruta's going to share some blogs that I would like you to try and read in the background. So one of them is this one here about DuxSoup Safety. This was written last month and it went live. And I think it's worth reading through in a bit more detail. I'm not going to cover it all now as the blog, but I'm going to show you the settings that have been changed. So have a read through that. The other one Ruta is going to share is about the planner. And I think this is something else that can help you to really keep your account safe. So I think we should jump into it and go into options. So any DuxSoup users, you'll know how to do this, but if you click DuxSoup and if you click on options, you'll go to a page like this. With regards to safety, what I want you to try and realize is that DuxSoup is a bot that is going to replace human behavior. I don't want it to speed up human behavior. So if you think of what you could do manually in a couple of hours, you could probably connect with about 50 connections, 50 profiles, maybe even 100. I don't think you could do 1,000. So when you're trying to figure out your settings, it's all about this here into throttling. And I think the settings I'm going to show you here is what I apply for all companies that I work with, any company we're doing training with, and we've never had an account flagged doing these settings. If you think about LinkedIn settings, there's no boundaries of how fast you can go. So LinkedIn don't tell you any rules. If you Google, how many people can I connect with? If you even speak to the live chat, if you go knock on the door of LinkedIn and say, how many people can I connect with? They'll not tell you. So there are no rules to this. So the equivalent is you're driving a car and you get flagged by the police and they say you were going over the speed limit and you say, what's the speed limit? And they say it changes every day for every car. That's the sort of analogy. So I think with regards to your LinkedIn profile, you need to try the happy medium where you can automate things, but it's not going to cause any flags. So these are the settings I would do. In terms of visiting profiles, I would have it as slowest. You can set this, and I'm going to show you how to use the planner, that it's just running in the background. So there's no need to go crazy fast for this when you just want to cover everything each day. Scanning profiles, you can go medium, which is another software, another sort of part of DuxSoup, but we're not going to do today. For this one here, pause, what we're trying to do is say, every time you're looking at a profile, after every 20 visits, pause for 5 minutes. This means if you're going to visit 100 profiles, you're going to have, I don't know, 5 breaks or 4 breaks, something like that. So again, pause for 5 minutes after every 20 visits. That's perfectly fine. These are the big ones that people mess up on, and I would like to recommend this. So for profile visits, I've had a lot of discussions with the founder about this, and although you can visit up to 500 a day or recruit a 600 or 1500, it doesn't mean you have to. So I would set this always as up to 150 visits per day. If you've got a Sales Navigator account, maybe 200, and if you've got a basic account, you can maybe drop it. But I think if you set it for 150 visits a day, you're going to be fine. In terms of connection requests, I would do the following. If you're a new user, I would do the first week at 25, the second week at 50, and then the third week and all following weeks at 75. So that means by 3 weeks, you've gradually built this up of doing 75 a day. But to start with, 25 per day, second week 50 per day, and then third week 75 per day. There's a few reasons for this. One of them is you don't want LinkedIn to know that you're highly automating something. And if your LinkedIn account goes from 0 activity to 500 messages a day, it's obvious that something's changed. The other thing is, what will you do even if people reply? So if you're connecting with 500 a day and 200 or 300 reply, and suddenly on a weekly basis, you've got 1,000 LinkedIn messages to reply to, you're just going to struggle. And so people are going to be left frustrating that you start a conversation and never go back to them. So start with 25, then go to 50, and then go to 75. And this keeps it consistent. It lets you test lots of different things, but you have consistent metrics that you always connect with 75 a day. Direct messages, I would leave this to something like 100. So if you're going to have 150 profile visits, maybe direct messages up to 100 per day is fine. This one here, apply random correction to the daily limit. You don't need to do that. And this one here, snooze the robot when one of the daily limits is reached or as dictated by the robot planner. Keep that ticked. So this basically means that when any of these targets are set, DuxSoup's going to snooze and it's not going to run anymore. This is really important because it means that you're never going to go over these limits. And if you can see in the top right, this number 7, that shows I've visited 7 profiles today. So whenever I've visited 150, or I've connected with 75, or I've sent 100 direct messages, the system's just going to stop. And that's what I want to do. So I think if you want to take a screenshot or write this down or whatever you think, but if you do it at this pace, I'm really confident that your account will not get flagged. If it's a brand new account, go slower. If you've had an account for years, you can maybe push that to 100 per day. But anybody who's doing 150, 200, 300, that sort of thing, it's a matter of time until your account will get flagged because it's just too much activity. That's too hardcore. So I would say go slow and go steady. If you're worried that you need to connect with more people to get more leads, then I would say try and look at the conversion rate. So try and look at how many people are actually connecting and accepting and try and get that number higher by sending better messages. But I think in general, these are the settings so far. So Rita, are there any questions about that so far?
No.
Yeah.
All good.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So I think the next thing is the planner. So if you think of all the settings you have here, action, skipping, throttling is the speed. This option here is planner, and it can look at different ways. It can look like that, it can look like that, it can look like that. Basically, the planner is a functionality that lets DuxSoup run in the background. So if you imagine we set it like this, what will happen is as long as your browser is open, so you've got your Chrome browser open like this, at 6 o'clock, DuxSoup will automatically open LinkedIn, start connecting people, and then stop at 11 o'clock at night. So obviously it's going all day. If you set it random like this, it'll start at 1 o'clock in the morning on Monday and then stop and then continue and stop, things like that. So usually I would say to people, set up some times in the day. So I would say maybe there, maybe there, maybe there, maybe there. Things like this. So what this is doing is this is replicating what you might do on a human basis. You might first thing in the morning, check LinkedIn, connect with a few people, do a bit of work, then do some more connections, a bit more work and do some more connections. Next day is a bit different, next day is a bit different, and so on. This is very good to keep your account safe because DuxSoup is seeing there's not any set routine. Every day you're behaving a bit different. Now DuxSoup can't track that you've actually got a planner that's running this for you in the background. But with this sort of random looking behavior, it means that DuxSoup can run in the background, can start connecting with people and then stop. And then if it either hits the total limits for the hours, or if we go back to throttling, if it reaches the limit for any of these, then it will stop. So this is as automated as you can get DuxSoup to be running without having to do anything yourself. The only sort of prerequisites for this to make sure it works is, one, your laptop needs to be switched on. So DuxSoup is not cloud-based. It's based on you having your browser open. Step two is obviously computer open and browser open and this working. What I would recommend is if you right-click on a tab, you can say pin tab. And if you pin a tab, then what happens is it pins in the top corner like this. That means that you can still use LinkedIn or different parts of the browser at the same time, but this is just hidden in the corner. I think we get a lot of questions about, can I use LinkedIn at the same time as I'm using DuxSoup? My advice would be, I would advise not to. I would let DuxSoup do its thing and then use LinkedIn. If you really want to do it in tandem, then make sure you have a Sales Navigator account. If you have a basic LinkedIn account, it can add a bit of risk to your profile. But if you have a LinkedIn Sales Navigator account, using both LinkedIn and DuxSoup at the same time is fine. But again, if you want to be ultra safe, I would say have the settings to look like this. So very, very modest. Have the planner to be very random throughout your working day, and then only use LinkedIn at times when DuxSoup is not running. If you do that, you can keep your account safe at all times, and you don't need to worry about being flagged, being banned, those sorts of things. So I think that's worth making sure you're comfortable with that, reading the blogs that Ruth has shared and asking us questions either today or via live chat and email, that sort of thing. Is there any other questions on that, Ruth, that I can run through?
Let me see. Can you set the planner based on a time zone? Arden is asking.
I think this is a good question. So I think, do you know, I'm not 100% sure. I think the planner is based on the time zone that you're in, but I'm not 100% sure. Who's that from?
Arden.
So I think you might have to get Arden's email and email. Arden, could you send an email to support and then we'll have to get back to you, because I think this is based on reading what time zone your LinkedIn profile is in, but I'm not 100% sure. And so I'd rather like to check for you and then get back to you to confirm that. But it would make complete sense that it'll be on the profile you're in. Otherwise, we would state that here. But if you can email support, we'll get back to you with an answer on that.
Yeah, so Zev asked, so DuxSoup will stop if the computer goes to sleep mode.
Yeah, so if basically look at DuxSoup as an extended pair of eyes for you. So if DuxSoup can see your screen and can see your LinkedIn profile, then it'll be connecting. If DuxSoup can't see anything and it's just black or sleep, it'll not run. There's a few options around this. Some people get an external laptop, just a very cheap laptop that can just run in the background, set the sleep settings so it never goes on sleep mode, and you just let it run all the time. The other sort of solution that's a little bit more technical is get a sort of remote server, so that the computer is always running because it's running on a remote server and you can just run it that way. A little bit more complicated, but I think that could be another route to go down if you want to be ultra safe and have things running always in the background. Anything else, Rita? Is that okay?
No more questions.
Perfect. So I think the final thing is about Lint Helper. So we get a lot of people asking, because I think Lint Helper was flagged by LinkedIn, and a lot of their users got an email saying you're using a third-party tool. And a lot of there's a lot of LinkedIn chat. I think there's a hashtag called auto ban or ban automation tools or things like that. It's funny really how I should approach it. I was personally really tempted that anybody that was using the hashtag auto ban, I was going to set up an automation to message them and connect with them, because they wouldn't realize that they're speaking to an automated bot. But I thought, no, I need to refrain from this and just sort of respect their decision. But I think in terms of automation, I think a lot of people on the side of ban automated tools are because they think it's spammy and too pushy. I think you need to be very specific with your target audience and your messaging, that automating a tool is just the same as you manually doing it. It's just more efficient compared to you just messaging anybody for the sake of it because you can automate. So I am on the school of thought that bespoke and high quality is the best way forward. I just prefer bespoke and high quality, highly automated, and let me focus on other things at other times. So I think with any sort of news about Lint Helper, other tools that are banned, my advice would be try not to use too many external softwares in tandem with DuxSoup, because the more Chrome softwares you use, I think the easier it is for LinkedIn to flag that you're using a tool. In terms of will DuxSoup get shut down, will Lint Helper get shut down, all those sorts of things, I can't really speak about that, but I really don't think so. See, now DuxSoup's got nearly, I think it's about 80,000 users and been running for about 4 to 5 years now. So my advice would be any software that you use, get to know the software, get to use the safety settings, get to understand how it works, read the blogs and stay up to date with how things are developing, because using a tool like this puts you in the top percentage of marketers and salespeople who know about things like this. But at the same time, you need to constantly adapt how the layout changes with LinkedIn and how the environment changes. So if we ever feel that there's an update or you need to do something, we'll mention it on the newsletter, we'll mention it on the groups, that sort of thing. But if you ever have any questions as well, let us know. But I think the main thing is we've worked really hard in the background to make sure DuxSoup is a safe tool. So you can just focus on the bespoke things for your profile, your LinkedIn profile, your target audience, your messaging, the speeds, that sort of thing. But as far as the account being safe, I think that's something you can relax about. So Rita, is there any final questions? Otherwise, we can keep this quite a short webinar.
Oh, yeah. There's one. How many messages can you set up after prospects accepted your connection request? We currently use 2 within delays.
Okay, so this is more of a turbo question, but I think this is from Arden. So thanks for the question. Arden's asking about when you set up the automation, how many follow-up messages can you send? So that's the limit, Arden, here. So you can send, after the connection, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 follow-ups with as long as you want, days, hours, and minutes. So a maximum of 5. If you want to go more than 5, then have a look at integrations with Zapier, but I don't think there's any need. All I would do is, if you think about it, if you're messaging someone 5 times and they still haven't spoken to you as a lead, they're probably not that interested. So I would say try to do as many as 5, and I usually say connection message, 24 hours later, 5 days later, 7 days later, 14 days later, then something like 28 days later. And that gives you a couple of months worth of messaging, and that's more than enough to automate to build a relationship. Cool. Any final questions?
Can you automate the second message so it's the same?
Yeah, so Alexander, this is only on Turbo, but this is the connection message, and then the follow-up is this one here, automated follow-up messages, but this is only on a DuxSoup Turbo account. So if you have a look at the pricing here, that's a quick intro into the differences between Starter, Professional, and Turbo. Professional have all of the features apart from the automations and the webhooks, which tends to automate things a little bit more. So I think it's important to try and figure out what's the value of a sale for you, and if that's worth a couple $100, then getting 1 sale a month easily covers the costs of Turbo. And if that's the case, then I would try to automate connection message and a follow-up, because that can really help you to build relationships. So thank you for your time, everybody, today. I know it's quite a quick one, but basically there was a lot of worry about DuxSoup being safe, and it is. I think that's about it. There's a lot of settings to do, but just try and think about what could you, if you're ever worried about settings, try and think of what could you cover manually in maybe 2 hours, and that's what you should set the automations to. So usually things like 50 to 100 connection messages, maybe 100 profiles visited, that sort of thing. If you have any other questions in the future, we have a live chat function, we have newsletters, we have blogs, we have all sorts of ways that we try and help you. So just get in touch at any time, and we're always here to help. Any final bits to run through it? Is that okay?
That's it, yeah. I shared the email address.
Perfect. So keep in touch, everybody. Thanks for all your time today, and we'll speak to you very soon. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.